welcome to the Miramichi Leader and Rogers TV presentation of the local campaign, Miramichi Mayoral Debate. I'm your moderator, Rene, and we are coming to you from the Rogers studio in Miramichi, New Brunswick. Tonight's debate will cover the issues of the municipal election taking place on Monday, May 9th, 2016. The order of the candidates has been determined by draw prior to coming to the stage. Joining me are candidates Gerry Cormier, Peggy McLean, Rene Smith, John Foran, and Keith Kenny. Please welcome our panelists for the evening, Larry Lynch and Shannon McLeod, both local journalists from the Miramichi Leader and Miramichi Online. The rules of the debate are as follows. Each candidate will begin with a short introduction of themselves, limited to 2 minutes. The first candidate will then be posed a question from one of our panelists. The candidates will have 60 seconds to respond, and each of the remaining candidates will also have 60 seconds to provide a rebuttal response. After all candidates have commented, there will be a 1.5-minute moderated debate. All candidates will be addressed to participate. The moderator's job will be to ensure all candidates are permitted to comment and to keep the topic on focus with the question asked. Tonight, we will attempt to ask as many questions as possible during this broadcast. As we near the end of the debate, candidates will be asked to give their closing statements. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds for their closing statements. First, we begin with candidate introductions. So, Mr. Gerry Cormier, you are our first candidate, and we'll introduce your statements.
Good. Well, my name is Gerry Cormier, and I'm a candidate for mayor in the May 9th municipal election. I'm feeling very good now, and I'm ready to serve you as your mayor. Here are some of the major events that has happened during my watch. A 10,000-foot runway, a new Pace Center building with 550 new employees, the Arbec Mill, expansion at NBCC, new schools, Winners and Giant Tiger. Also, the Sistema project is very close to my heart because it is an opportunity for young people who may not have had the opportunity to serve in an orchestra right here in the Miramichi. The Acadian Games are coming in 2018. This will have a tremendous impact on the economy for that week. I am also looking forward to the air show, the tall ships. As you can see, I have been very busy because, as you all recall, in 2008, the city was in an economic crisis. Today, things are moving forward in a positive way. And I ask you all to judge me on my accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. I'm going to now ask Mrs. Peggy McLean as our next speaker.
Thank you very much, Vero. Well, my name is Peggy McLean, and it's a pleasure to be here to have the opportunity to address you, my fellow Miramichiers. Thank you to Rogers and to the leader for facilitating the debate, and I would like to acknowledge my fellow candidates. When I was asked why I decided to run for mayor of the city of Miramichi, my answer was simple. I believe that this is the best place to live, and I want to make it better. I know the possibilities are endless in Miramichi, but we can't afford to waste time. The next 4 years will dictate the next 20 and beyond. We need to foster a positive environment for business growth and development, and that has to begin at City Hall. It is crucial that we take control of our own planning. As your councillor, I was an advocate for that, and I will continue to lead that charge as your mayor. I see Miramichi as being a leader in green energy initiatives. I have been working with our First Nations communities on a project that will put us on that path should it come to fruition. We need to further develop our parks and outdoor spaces to support tourism, but it will also enhance our own quality of life. We must be accountable and transparent on how our tax dollars are spent. We have to manage our city in a way that is accountable to all Miramichiers. It is also important to continue the work on the multiplex. It will support a healthy lifestyle, it will attract more people to our community, and become an economic driver through sport tourism and other development. I believe that this council has been proactive and we've built a momentum, but we must capitalize on it. But to do that, we need a good team and we need the right leadership. I know that for the city of Miramichi, I am the right choice. right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McLean. We'll now ask our next candidate, Mr. Rene Smith.
My fellow Miramichi, I'm your candidate for mayor, and I'm married to Donna Kelly from Luggyville, and I had 4 daughters and 5 grandchildren. I own a house since 1976, and like so many of you, your kids had to leave the city to go find a job somewhere else. As mayor, I'm committed to build on the community pride to keep Miramichi a warm, positive, and friendly city. I believe the city of Miramichi has reached a turning point in our story as a city. The election of this council is critical to the future of our senior, your children, grandchildren, for that matter, all the people in Miramichi. We cannot turn the clock on the past. We are a city. We must take the story of the village and town and build on it. To continue, we can continue building a vibrant community to live, work, and play with our people being the greatest asset. As mayor, my agenda is simple. As a city, we must look at the future with one goal of self-sufficiency. The reason for me running as mayor is I'm really opposed to this multiplex, Miramichi recreational infrastructure. I'm extremely concerned with the present approach, which appears to be replacement altogether. I believe the problem was created by poor management of our assets. There is other solution. The best course of action for me is upgrading our asset. I do not like the word repair. The intent to borrow $20 million and $20 million from the government, so eventually it's the same taxpayer that pay for everything. My proposal also will ensure that the jobs are created here on Miramichi. As you know, the province has an agreement. They must absolutely give the big contracts to all the province. So there's no contractor here that could do that.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll now ask our next candidate, Mr. John Foran, to speak.
Thank you, Madam. Welcome, fellow candidates. And I'd like to thank Rogers for giving me the opportunity to appear here tonight to express my views. I'm born and raised and bred here in Miramichi, and I only left Miramichi for 1 year. That was in 1976 to go to the Atlantic Police Academy, and I came back here and I was hired on the Chatham Police Force, and I've lived here ever since. I've always had a great passion for Miramichi. I come from a family of 10 children, who I'm the oldest, and I've seen the struggles that go with parents, and one member working in the family, trying to raise a family, trying to have enough money to stretch it around. I've seen what the recreation needs were over the years, the education needs. Then I had my own family, and I raised 3 children here on the Miramichi. One's now living in Halifax and 2 in Alberta. I have 2 brothers in Alberta, 1 sister in Moncton, and the rest of my family lives here. So I know what it is that people have to move away to work. And my utmost, I guess, time will be spent trying to create an economic climate here in the Miramichi that will bring people back to the Miramichi, especially to attract businesses. My main goal will be to work, because we know that the city of Miramichi does not have the deep pockets that our provincial and federal governments have. My aim will be to reach into those pockets with our MLAs and our MP, and to have funds distributed to the Miramichi in a fair and equitable way. With the multiplex center, it's going to be the biggest single expense that the city of Miramichi or any of the villages and towns have ever made. We have to judge that carefully. We have to really look at the tax dollars, and at the end of the day, decide if we can afford it. I don't think any more money should be spent on exploring it until we find out what kind of funding will come from the government, and then make a decision even if we go ahead. I am now retired from employment. I'm living in the area. I spend all my time here. I have the time to commit to the job, and I believe that I have the experience to provide the leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foran. I'll now turn to our last candidate, Mr. Keith Kenny.
Good evening, folks. Miramichi citizens too also. I'm candidate for mayor. I'd like to take this time to introduce myself as Keith E. Kenny, Wemyss House. There is negative and positive in life, ups and downs. Martin Luther King had a North American dream. Keith E. Kenny has North American millions in the Bank of Canada to boost the economy. Keith Kenny is positive and finds his ground here on earth. I would like to see Miramichi be more involved in things like Hockeyville, for we can make our infrastructure better, like our local rinks, if we win first place. I like to stay strong and bring people to work for they can be happy and don't have to be moving away from Miramichi City. Anyways, that's the way I look, and that's the way I like to be positive about things. Instead of being negative and down and sad, I like to advance Miramichi forward, and I would do so if I get in office. And as much as I can say is as much as I can do while I'm not in office. So it's up to the people's choice. And there's 5 people here, and they'll make their choice on May 9th. Keith Kenny, Miramichi Mayor. And I would like to thank the people if the seat is fulfilled with Mr. Kenny. And I'll do the best I can to prosper the city to grow even more with bringing in a YMCA. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. We'll now turn to our panelist question. Our panelist number 1 is Shannon McLeod from the Miramichi Leader, and she will ask a question.
Okay. Given that New Brunswick has yet to establish rules for governing disclosure of campaign financing, why or why not do you believe candidates should disclose election campaign spending and funding?
So, yep, you are number 1.
Okay, well, good question. I have no problem disclosing funding, especially for candidates. I'm not getting a whole lot, so I can disclose it pretty quickly to anybody that wants to know. But I guess your question says, are we ready to disclose? Yes, no problem at all.
Okay, Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Madam. I too am in favor of full disclosure. I've always been somebody who has advocated for transparency and accountability. I did that when it came to the Timberwolves. I did that when it came to the Airport Commission. Anytime you are looking at a public office and you want to be in a position of trust, I feel that you must be transparent and you must be accountable. And I think that goes for any level of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Well, for me, it's very straightforward. As a mayor, I intend to approach those questions in this matter. I will make representation as mayor to the government. Enough is enough. Let's make it clear. But if the council support me, in my view, transparency, I agree with what she said. It's absolute in these days. So no owing nothing to nobody, and the only way to achieve it is because it's not in our power to change this, but it is in our power to make representation. Too many years have gone by, I watch the same thing with, well, we cannot do nothing about it. We can make representation, and it's my intention to do on that subject, to make representation that stop once and for all, so it's an equal, fair fight for everybody who want to run for an office.
Thank you. Mr. Foran?
Certainly do believe in full disclosure. I, as a provincial candidate, I had to do that 3 times, I guess, and I certainly believe in municipal politics, although, as my counterpart said, Mr. Smith, we don't have that within our power of jurisdiction. But I really believe, from what I've read in the newspapers on discussions with the provincial government, I think you'll see that forthcoming probably before the next election.
Okay. And Mr. Kenny, your thoughts?
Yes, I have many. I have a nonprofit and a profit organization, a sole proprietor of, and my partnerships would be with the provincial and federal government as 49% to split with each of my registered business. And until the meantime, I'm sole proprietor of it, and I could take and leave here at any time when I chose to. But I chose to stay here on the Miramichi for the Miramichiers. And that's where I stand, and that's where I'll be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. So as we move into our open discussion now on this subject, what do we see as challenges towards maybe disclosing financial results from campaigning and things like that? Anyone want to comment on that? some of the challenges behind, what that might be in implementing or what that might be as a candidate?
Well, I would say that with anything, when it comes to changing law, I know that we've been working on the Municipalities Act for some time, and we have been lobbying the government to make the changes that are necessary. So it's been a challenge, and although I am in favor of it, I don't see it happening as quickly as I would like.
Okay. Mr. Cormier, your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm the same as Peggy there. I think we'd like to have it done and done quickly, but I think with government, I think it'll come, but I don't think it'll be overnight. I think it'll be a little while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Foran, what do you see as challenges?
Well, I don't see any great challenge, just the will by the people in Fredericton, the politicians and the bureaucrats to draft the legislation, and they are overhauling right now the municipal legislation, to my understanding, and the next election is 4 years away, so that's plenty of time to bring it in. I'll be surprised if it's not in the next election.
Sure. And Mr. Smith?
Well, for me, it's we have so many examples of good regulation. Election Canada, I taught it for 2 elections, and there is a system in place. So why do we want to reinvent the wheel? Spend money on something. Take that, get permission to copy it, and make it happen. So it's for me, it's a fait accompli. All we need to do is say to the government, use what's there. Don't try to reinvent the wheel and spend money.
Okay. Mr. Kenny, last thoughts on that subject?
Well, my thoughts are the same as they were just previous what I said, and I'll stick my heart right there, and it'll keep beating towards the Miramichi to stay strong, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to go to our second panelist, Mr. Larry Lynch from Miramichi Online, and for you to ask your question.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank all the candidates for putting their names forward. Very, very honorable thing to do.
Thank you, Larry.
So my question is, please rank the following 3 priorities, starting with the most important, and then please explain your ranking. The first one is keeping taxes low. Second one is investing in infrastructure like waterfronts and recreation. And the third one is growing the city's population.
And so we're going to start with Mrs. McLean on this question.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that you are asking us to rank those. I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. I think that they are all intertwined. I think they all depend on each other. If we are going to keep taxes low, we have to develop our waterfront. We have to work on our tourism. And I just think that it's something that is difficult to try to rank simply for that reason. I think more than one project is something that we've been working on for some time with this council. I don't think that we're able to, I'm not able to rank it because I do think that they all depend on each other, and I think that to move forward, we're going to have to work on each and every one equally.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Well, I'll address the tax. For me, this is a big issue. It must stay what it is. We are getting ourselves out of competition against the 3 gold city, they call it, Moncton, St. John, Fredericton. So we must maintain the tax low, and the only way to accomplish that is by doing a complete review of our programs to ensure that we get maximum on it, dollar value. As far as the infrastructure, this is not going to stop because it has to be done, because every year we don't spend on our water, sewage, and road. It will cost us a lot more 4 or 5 years down the road. And to establish a good infrastructure, I have the experience of a $60 million Suffield base, 250 square miles. I also have the base here and knowledge. So for me, a 4, 5, 10-year plan must be shown to the public. And the growth, well, we must bring more people, bring back the kids if we can, and that's why my plan of upgrading the infrastructure is to bring the people to work.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now, Mr. Foran, I'll ask for your thoughts.
Well, the first question is in priority. I think we really have to, they are intertwined, there's no doubt about that. But I think we really have to work hard to keep the taxes low, because I think that's what attracts new investment. People will invest in your community and bring their businesses here if they're having a reasonable tax rate and some assurance that it's going to stay like that. The second thing would be the infrastructure. Very, very concerned about the infrastructure. I know we got an asset management plan coming forward. I wish it could have been out before the election, but it's not, and it's probably going to shock us, the cost that it's going to cost to maintain all the infrastructure, whether it be the street surfacing or underground or whatever. It's going to be a lot, so that's going to play into it. The third thing would be the population growth, and I think if we can keep the tax low and we can attract the businesses to come here, and I know that we have to provide external infrastructure like rinks and swimming pools and things like that to attract, to attract people
Mr.
here.
Foran, I'm going to have to stop you there. We'll come back to you in a few moments. And Mr. Kenny, your thoughts?
Yes, I'd just like to address the taxes here due to our water and sewage. I would see that the people would get a break on that, and they won't have to be so worried and lose sleep and be stressed out over their water bills every so many months they have to pay. Anyways, that's where my heart stands, and that's what I'll see to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now have an open discussion on that, and please do feel free to jump in when you have thoughts on the question itself. So, as we look at keeping taxes low, how do you balance that between keeping taxes low and really looking at our infrastructure and how we rebuild it?
Well, I think that taxes are an investment, and whether it's in our infrastructure or whether it's in growing our population, we've been very fortunate. This council has been able to keep the taxes low for the entire mandate. I'm an absolute advocate for that. I pay taxes. I am a taxpayer. As far as our infrastructure goes, we will know. We're looking at maybe the first week of June or the second week of June when we will have our asset management plan, and we will have an accurate picture of what that will look like. For population growth, I mean, we've been blessed with the pay center, but it's not enough. We need to do more, and that is something that I will task council with doing.
Anyone else thoughts on it?
I'd like to speak on it because I didn't get a chance.
I know I'm gonna come back to you at the end. That was my mistake, and I apologize
That's okay.
for that.
Larry looked at me, but I didn't want to say anything. Anyway,
Totally my fault.
sorry, that's okay. No problem. I think for me, it's not easy. It looks easy when you're there looking at us in council, but it's not. It's very difficult to keep. We were blessed to get money from the province of New Brunswick in the last while to keep the taxes low, but that's all over now. So we got to sit down as a team, as a council, and really sit and put our heads together. Because I believe also to get the people back here, you have to have something taxes is good, but they got to come back to a job. And like I think Peggy said for the pay center, but we got to get other things here. Today a good announcement to do engineering, another 100 jobs. That'll haul people here. So I'm really happy to say that that's what we have to do, work on. Get more jobs here, keep the taxes low. And I think with that, people will come back.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts?
Yep. When you talk about taxes, we have kept it low, but let's be fair and honest about the whole situation. You kept the tax rate low by not increasing nothing, but meanwhile, the provincial government kept increasing the value of the houses. So our seniors, 65% of them got hit year after year because the value of the house, in my case, $5,000. I don't mind paying my share, but it is very important. The company coming in are very conscientious of the population, and they need to have a good tax rate to move in the city.
Thank you very much. We're now going to our next question with our panelist, Shannon McLeod.
Okay. The Miramichi multiplex has been a hot topic for months. So what do you believe is the best course of action for the city to take, and why?
And Mr. Smith, the question is to you.
Okay, well, for me, the building of the new sportsplex is a no-go, okay? Because the demographic does not support a $60 million expenditure. 2001 population 18,508. In 2002 we lost 564 friends and family. So in 2002 our population was 17,944. So do the math. And what are we, 2016? I know for a fact that 400 people a year die in the city. There's no replacement. 100 kids may be born every year. So our demographic is going negative through the years. But for me is, again, the plex, it has to be something the kids will use. We got 2 new schools pointed out by the mayor that they're going to build. 2 gym will be there. So why can we not make representation, like I was a trustee in Alberta, that those gyms be used, and our director of sports program send the kids to those schools.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now to you, Mr. Foran.
Well, the multiplex is certainly a hot button issue in this community over the last few months. And I think I made myself quite clear at the last council meeting. There was a motion there to proceed with site selection, design, and funding for the multiplex. And I ended up making an amendment after an amendment that we just explore the option of funding, and that's where I stand. And what I mean by that is we don't spend 5 cents more of taxpayers' money on moving ahead with this multiplex. What I believe we should do is meet with our MP and our local MLAs and find out what kind of a ballpark figure is there. At the same time, I don't want to rob future infrastructure money that could be used underground and above ground surfacing on roads and streets or whatever, and take it out of a pie that could be go to the multiplex. We got to decide which way we want to go, and I think we can get all that information in short notice, but the key here is to work with our federal and provincial partners.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Foran. Mr. Kenny, to you.
Yes, the multiplex would be a big project. But for myself, I got other projects like to do, like the former Morrissey Bridge. And I can take and do that with my own money that's coming, that I'm going to be receiving shortly, that George Martin's working on, my solicitor, and which I'll spend my money, not the city spending Keith Kenny's money. And the multiplex is put aside in my mind, and I'll rather see our infrastructure fixed up and done to be presentable for newcomers to be moving into our city, for the different jobs that are going to be available, for I got more to add to the future. And you'll see that when I get in office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Now to you, Mr. Cormier.
Thank you. I think, as you can see, I liked what John Foran said it very clear, that we're only exploring right now. We're exploring so that we're giving staff the authority to contact both federal and provincial government to discuss the funding. And if we don't get the funding, the project is probably going to be stopped. It's, we need the funding. If otherwise, we're going to have to take $22 million from the taxpayer to fix the old buildings. It's as simple as that. So it's a very important decision. But should we look at it and explore it? Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. And Mrs. McLean, final word to you.
Thank you. Well, it's no secret how I stand on this issue, and yes, I did bring that motion forward because I want to be, again, transparent about what the next step should be. We need to have accurate information to make good decisions, and to do that, we have to go through the necessary steps. Of course, we need to see if the funding's there. We have to make sure that we have that in place before we do move forward. When I look at spending $6,000 a week in oil at the Golden Hawk, it's staggering to me that we have those kinds of numbers and that we have people that think that we don't need to take a look at what we need to do with our infrastructure. I've been a strong advocate for that, and I will continue to move that file forward.
Thank you very much. Now, as we go to our open discussion on the question, please, again, do jump in when you feel the need. Let's talk a little bit about the multiplex, and some of the social media behind it has been stating that it's perhaps a generational divide here in the city, and that the younger generation of our city are looking for those kind of recreation facilities, and of course our longtime generation, we'll call it, or more seasoned generation, is looking perhaps at upgrading our own infrastructure. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't agree that that's the case. That's not been what I've heard. I know that there's been a movement by the young people, and as they said, you're not going to see them at public meetings and what have you, but they are on social media. I'm on social media. I've also spoken to a lot of seniors who see the value in bringing our people home, our young people who are out there who want to move home. We talk about building business. They look at what do we have for a regional hospital. We have that. Do we have schools? We have that. It's a missing piece of the puzzle when we're trying to draw new business here. And the other thing is, people are asking me, what's in it for seniors? We have an indoor walking track. That's key to keep our generations, whatever you are, healthy. The other thing is, we're looking at putting in a therapeutic pool. That is key to anyone who's had any type of surgery when it comes to hip replacement, knee replacement, or even arthritis. So I don't hear what you hear.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Mr. Smith?
$22 million to fix. Okay, I have some serious question on that, because you say 22 million to fix. If you're going to borrow $20 million to build a new plex, and you have a one-third, why can you not take the 22 million and turn it into one-third? So you would only spend the city 5 million or 4, and then go out and ask for the rest of the money from the provincial federal.
That's because there aren't any programs in place for existing infrastructure.
That's the job of the councillor and the mayor, to make representation. Obviously, the government would be much more accurate to lend 5 million or 10 million instead of 20 million. So.
Okay. Well, first of all, it may not necessarily be one third, Rene. From what I am understanding from the plan, is that the federal government may give 50%.
Correct.
The provincial government, that's what we're trying to see for the funding. And also the city has a plan so that, because we're all taxpayers here, everybody in this room. And I don't want my taxes any higher than anybody else. But will the seniors use it? Absolutely. They're going to use the pools. They're going to use the gyms, the walking trails.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
everything.
Cormier. We're going to move on to our
Thank
next
you.
question. Thank
Okay.
you.
You didn't
I'm
give the
going-
rest of us a chance.
we're gonna. You can. The next question.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Jump in. Jump in. That's why it's an open discussion. Jump in when you feel the need. Our next panelist question, of course, comes from Larry Lynch, and we'll ask you to ask that to Mr. Foran.
Well, Mr. Foran, this is probably a good segue from the last question. As a mayor, do you think there has been a sufficient relationship built with other levels of government? Is it important? And what would you do to improve it?
Well, I think we do have a relationship with the two levels of government, but you got to remember the federal government just changed parties in the last September, and the provincial government has been 2 years. So I think we've had a fairly good relationship, but I think it could be much, much better. And to make it better, I would encourage my council, if I'm the mayor, to meet on a regular basis with our local MLAs and perhaps meet at least in Fredericton once a year with the cabinet/caucus and bring our concerns forward and have all our concerns prioritized and meet with them. And I know that's the way to get things done because I've been there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foran. Mr. Kenny, your thoughts on the matter?
Yes, as mayor, I would be working with different sectors of the provincial and federal government. That's due to the Department of Transportation, Department of Health, and etc. And we can work together once we're together. Once I'm as mayor, I can get on my internet, Facebook, and introduce and do stuff properly.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Mr. Cormier.
Good. I find that over the years, as you all know, I've been there a little while, I've worked well with both levels of government, both parties, both Conservatives and Liberal, worked well with them. And I think it's by working together as a team that things get done. And I will continue to do the same, to lobby government and to work well with them.
Thank you. And Mrs. McLean?
Thank you. Well, I've only been there for 4 years. However, I've been able to build some wonderful relationships, whether it's with our provincial government, whether it's with our federal government, or if it's with our First Nations or our Francophone. I've been an advocate for the Jeux de l'Acadie. I've worked that file for 4 years. I've also been working on a project, as I said, with our First Nations that would make us a leader in green energy initiatives. So regardless of which level or which community I'm looking to work with, I will continue to do so.
Thank you. And
For
finally,
me,
Mr.
it's
Smith.
very straight. There's no doubt the council must present their vision to the leader. We should be, as a mayor, dealing directly with the Prime Minister and the Premier of the province. Most important, I think the clear plan has to be put in place. I don't see it. I think we have to work with the rules, and I agree. Gerry said there may be potential 50%, but the bottom line is we have to work with what we have, and then we have to make sure we change it. So, and again, is change the process so it will favor the city, and we will be on the same footing than the big city. Okay, and that's my issue: is attack the process so we are favored to the maximum, and stop begging for it by having a good plan.
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll head into our open discussion on the matter. And given that there are so many communities across the country and across the province that are looking for assistance, how do you improve that relationship, and how do you make us stand out when you're talking to the government at all levels? Mr. Foran, we'll start with you, actually.
Okay, well, I think the biggest thing is to develop a real cooperation with our local, and when you're talking federal government, our local MP who is just newly elected, I do have a very good open relationship with him, and I could work with him, or I really believe that if it had been a Conservative government returned, I could have worked with them. But the thing is that you got to be in their face all the time. And that was done by previous MPs over the years. That's why we have a big prison in Renews that has, hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and a payroll center here down that has hundreds. You got to be in their face. And I believe that we have to be in the Member of Parliament's face. We got to be meeting with him. We probably should be meeting with him at least once every 2 months, and if it's required, ask for meetings beyond that.
Okay, Mr. Cormier, you were going to jump in there?
No, I was just going to say that it's very important that we continue to work well with all levels of government. And I know when I was there, it wasn't easy. Things seem easy when you think of the airport and you think of it, but there was a lot of work and a lot behind the scenes work. But it's when you can call a minister, call the premier, they don't hang up on you, that's a good sign.
Mr. Kenny, any last thoughts just before we go from this question?
Last thought is that I voted Liberal, and Liberals are in, and I'll work with them.
Okay.
And that's what my vote counts for. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So now we're going to go to our panelist, Shannon McLeod, to ask our next question to Mr. Kenny.
Okay. How would you help spur business development and employment in the city?
Well, I have a reference number which I registered a business for recycling, driftwood, and etc. And that puts money in people's pocket. It grows the city, develops it,
Spur business development.
and I'll be more involved in doing things such as participating in CBC's Craft Hockeyville, which is Miramichi City now involved with that 2016. I'm unaware of that because I'm not on council or I'm not in office.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Mr. Cormier.
Okay, I think to spur development in the city, I think one of the good working relationship would be with the Chamber of Commerce, and also with the local minister and an MP, so we can get together and even meet every few months or whatever, so that you can put things on the table, come down to one or so priorities, don't get with too many, and then go after it and get it and move forward.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. McLean?
Thank you. Well, I've said it and I'll say it again. I think it comes down to working with our developers, working with our business owners. We have to control our own planning. It's been an issue, it continues to be an issue, and it has to be addressed before I feel we'll be able to move the city forward. I agree that we have to work with our chamber. They've been a great advocate, and it's all about building relationships, and I'm definitely in favor of moving that forward.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Smith?
Well, for me, is our tax must remain competitive, okay? So our property tax is kept as low as possible, and our business coming in will be able to bring their people to come in the city where the tax are low. So their employee will remain competitive, so they won't be hit by strike increase in salary that's needed to pay because we have a high tax base. So that will be guiding the council towards to remain completely supportive, 100% plus toward the small business, because I want to take care of what the council and the city can do. The province, we will address that in time. So the Planning Commission, I was there for 9 years, 10 years. There is some little hiccup right now because of the new format. I certainly prepare to give them a chance. They are just people trying to do their job, but they must cut the red tape, and our little businessmen must get their license quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And final rebuttal to you, Mr. Foran, on this subject.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I think the key is keeping our tax rate low. That's what people want when they come here to do business. They want to see that they can bring people here and the tax rates will be low, not only for their business, but also for their employees. Now, the government, we can't give out money to businesses, but we can encourage our local MLAs and our MPs to do what they can to attract the businesses here, but we've got to make the environment for the business right here in Miramichi. So we've got to do our part. And one of the things is the Planning Commission. We all know there's an issue with the Planning Commission. We've got to work hard to solve that. We've asked our staff to bring forward options for us, and I'm willing to be wide open, my mind wide open when that comes forward. And we've got other things that are happening too, and I guess like getting back to the multiplex. And we've got to decide which way we're going to head on that. And of course, I support the new soccer track at the school in Chatham, and that's because it's going to give our kids healthy alternatives to using iPods, I guess.
Thank you very much. Now for our open discussion on the subject. So when we look at spurring economic development, as the question asked, what are we looking what are we looking for as far as maybe some great priorities on economic development here in the city, or what you're seeing for it? And anybody, please do jump in. The open discussion is meant for you to be able to jump in when you have an idea and a thought on the process.
Well, as I said, I do think that we need to support our small businesses. When the mills closed and we were in a financial strain, it was the small businesses and the small business owners that kept this city going. And I think that it's incumbent on us to support them, whether they're existing and they want to develop or whether they want to start a new business. I think that the city has to be open and the discussion has to be proactive.
Mr. Smith, thoughts on that?
For me, it's the new business people are very savvy. They will do research before wanted to come here. When I drive in the city and I see our sign 22,000 people, I ask myself, where's the transparency? What is the real number of our people? So I'm looking forward Seth Canada to give us the real number so we can make the proper decision in time. So the businessmen look at that very closely. And basically, they have to move all their stuff away from here. So it's cost additional to them to establish themselves in Miramichi. So we got to be very low on the tax to make them attractive, saving, and also their employees. So for me, the demographic is going to become the biggest issue of the next 4 years, because everything is linked to that.
Okay, now I'll ask Mr. Foran your thoughts on the last few seconds.
Well, I just believe that we've got to reach out to other community partners, which includes the Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, our local First Nations. We have 4 First Nations within a 50-kilometer radius, and they have funds and they have people that are experienced.
Thank you very much. So our final question comes from panelist Larry Lynch. Okay, and we'll ask him to ask Mr. Cormier that question, please.
This is another question about spending priorities.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm speaking as a resident and I say, I'm looking for your response, if I say, I believe I live on one of the streets in the city that needs the most repairs, how do you justify spending money on other big projects while my street and many others are in terrible condition?
Well, I think, Larry, as you know, your street, like all streets, when you look at your street, you don't see the other fellow's street. So basically, when we look at it, there's priorities. And we're getting more and more, and council's getting more and more on this, that the priority is from 1 to 10 or 20, whatever streets have to be done. And we're going in that order, Larry. Now, with other projects, depending on the projects, sometimes it's difficult. It's hard. It's not easy, because everybody wants their street done. And every street, like your street, needs to be done. So we're working on that, and I think we're going to be working more on it with the next council to get more of that done.
Wonderful, thank you. And we'll move to you next.
Thank you very much. Well, there are issues with streets. We're no different than any other city in this province or probably in this country. We need to invest in our streets. We're aware of that. We do have an asset management plan that is coming, and we rely heavily on our engineers and the professionals that do the hierarchy and let us know which streets need to be paved. Having said that, we can have the most wonderful streets in the world. If we have nobody living here and we don't have business coming in to take some of that tax relief and put the money into our city so that we can pave our streets, it's all for naught.
Thank you, Mrs. McLean. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, for me, it's the streets are extremely important for our fire hall, for our policemen to travel on. Safety is absolute. But how do you prioritize this? I heard this story when I was on the council. I hear it the last 8 years. Now we're going to have a plan after the election. Why didn't I have it before? Make it public. Make it public. And make public the process so people know why their street are not being. In fact, I think a side street, if there's a little hole into it, it won't slow down the car, the main drag. So we got to have sidewalk. We want to build a big plex to have people go walk over there. Let's fix the sidewalks around their house so they can take a little walk around. Let it be Luggyville, Nelson, or Douglastown. So this is my thought on the public work. But the public work has to be public, it has to be clearly identified. I attended the meeting. I was disappointed. It was a top to hand giving what's being done. No actual document presented to the
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you. I'm going to stop you there and go to you, Mr. Foran.
Well, there's no doubt about it that we're in dire shapes in this city with our streets. And I don't think Anybody in this room could live long enough to see them all fixed. We'll never have that kind of money. But all we can do is continue to work with our provincial and federal governments to obtain the funding we need and also spend it wisely and keep our tax rate low, but at the same time use our own money to upgrade the streets. It's a big issue in this city. That's why I'm so concerned about the multiplex, that if we go to the provincial or federal government and they're willing to give us, we'll say, $20 million, but they're saying that takes part of your infrastructure money because there's only so much money in the pie, then I'm not willing to move forward on the multiplex. So that's why I want to explore the options and find out how much we can have for a multiplex and how much we can get for infrastructure funding. And if the two don't mesh properly, then I'm certainly not going to be supporting a multiplex.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Foran. And finally, Mr. Kenny, to you.
Yes, as a citizen of the Miramichi, I travel the streets quite often. I see where there's bad holes on the road. I see that. I drive over them. I drive into them. I also got to repair my vehicle too. Ball joints, tie rod ends. Our first responders people, such as our ambulance, if they get into an accident, as they're trying to save somebody, spring of the year is the worst time for this stuff to happen. Over the winter, they'll get frost heaves, lifts that cement, asphalt, sorry. It creates a problem. And this is the problem that we're listening to right now. As mayor, I would see that our city streets would be a lot better to travel on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now our final open question or open session or open discussion at this moment. So as we look at infrastructure and the streets and the multiplex and all of that, how do you see prioritizing those and choosing between them, because they are all essential? And please, anyone, do jump in at this point.
Well, I feel, for example, on the multiplex, I think John said it all, in the sense of if we get the money for the multiplex, it might take away from our infrastructure, our roads and that. So I think it's very important we look at all that. And I've been a bugger for taxes to keep them low. So I'm going to keep being frugal. And even if we get the money and the taxes are too high for me, I just wouldn't be able to support it either. But I think that's important right now to get the money, and then we can prioritize.
Well, I think it's premature to be talking about one being excluding the other. I think that I've always gotten as much information as I possibly can, and I need credible information to make my decisions. So I'm in favor of continuing to source that out so that I do have the information I need to make those decisions. And I think that it's important that we invest in all parts of our city, whether it's our infrastructure being buildings or our roads or our pipes. They're all on a priority list for me.
Thoughts on that, Mr. Kenny?
Well, like I say before, there's priorities out there, and the priority number one is how we spend our money. Do we spend it by, I'm retired, I'm going to look after my family? Well, you're retired, you retire at home. Enjoy our retirement village, the city of Miramichi.
Okay, and Mr. Foran, thoughts on the balance there?
Well, I'm very concerned about where we're heading with our spending. And I think we've had a lot of good luck the last number of years with the extra money we've got out of the unconditional grants. And it really wasn't by good management, it was what the province gave us. And I think we've got to really consider that. And the only other thing I'd like to point out is that with the multiplex, I don't believe there's a gender divide. I've had young people come up to me and say, I'm very concerned about my taxes. I've had seniors come up to me and say they want the multiplex. So we've got to find that balance when the time comes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll actually now go to our closing statements by candidate. I'm going to ask Mr. Gerry Cormier to give his closing statements first.
Okay. Well, here are some of the projects I will be working on with the new council. I'll be working for the new plywood mill, the new terminal at the airport, the pellet plant, upgrade the Station Wharf Marina, the new nursing home, the new multiplex recreation center, more retail, and also more restaurants. I will continue to lobby government for more good-paying jobs in our city. I would like to finish by saying I will continue to work well with all political parties in power, as I have done in the past. You all know me by now to be a sincere, frugal, and positive person. I promise you that my loyalty will always be to the people who elected me, the citizens of the city of Miramichi. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. I'll now ask you, Mrs. McLean, to give your closing statements.
Thank you, Madam. As I stated in my opening remarks, my vision for our city supports a thriving business community. But to make this a reality, we must control our own planning. And we need someone who is young, energetic, an entrepreneur, and who is not afraid to make decisions. I'm at a place in my own business now that will allow me to shift my workload to my colleague so that I can dedicate the time I feel the city needs to prosper over the next 4 years. I have never backed away from a challenge. And as your mayor, I will always make decisions that are in the best interest of the taxpayers. I am very proud of the work that I have accomplished as your councillor, and I'm ready to put my passion, my experience, and my work ethic to work for you as your mayor for the city of Miramichi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. McLean. And Mr. Smith, we'll go to you now.
Well, as your mayor, the first item on the agenda is very straightforward. I want a complete review of the 3 and 5 years and 10-year plan, and this is the way to establish a fair balance in going construction, improving, make safe our school, the school, but the recreation places, so that way our kids are safe. But critically important, we must improve the support to our volunteer. We leave them out. They are very, very key people. They are so important. As mayor, I pledge that I am committed to job creation, job retention, to ensuring a continued support to grow the tourism industry, to ensure the protective service, such as our fire policemen, remain strong and capable of meeting the community expectation, to continue improving the water, sewage, and city. So, in conclusion, for me, the process is what we need to improve at City Hall in cooperation with our staff to achieve all those goals. So, les services de feu et policiers doivent rester forts pour rencontrer les exigences de la communauté. On doit former des plans sur une période de 3 à 5 ans. I believe the council must learn to do more with less, just as our senior and those minimum wages. A vote for me means you will have a full-time mayor, responsible, impartial, committed to work for all Miramichi. I believe that we live in a wonderful community.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We're now going to you, Mr. Foran.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'm not going to use a prepared speech. All I can say is what you see is what you got. I've kicked around this city for a long, long time. I've always been open and approachable. One thing I can guarantee you, that if you ever call me, you'll get a response. It may not be the response you want. It may not be satisfactory, but you'll darn well get a reply. I've been in public life for over 40 years. And my phone number has always in the phone book, and it's going to stay there. I want to work on your behalf as well as I want to work on other people's behalf. For example, my mother is 85. I can relate to her as a senior. Many of her friends I know. I have a granddaughter that is 5 years old, goes to Carrefour Beausoleil. When I look at the spectrum, that's a pretty wide spectrum. I've interacted with many people in between those 2 points in life. I understand the middle class. I am middle class, you know. I'm now retired. I'm living on a retiree's pension. I know what it's like. I want to do what I can to make life easy for all the citizens in Miramichi. I don't think that I'm the person that can develop that blueprint. I think there's going to be 9 people develop that blueprint. We have a strategic plan. It's well laid out, and if any of you take the time to read it, I think that's the guide to move forward. But I really believe that I can provide that leadership. I can assure you that I have the time to do the job, and I have the experience to provide the leadership you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foran. We'll ask you, Mr. Kenny, to speak now.
Yes, as mayor, I would definitely use the Francophone system. Then I would be the first disability Acadian mayor of Miramichi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny. So, I really want to say thank you to our panelists for coming this evening, actually, and the important questions that you're bringing from the general public. And of course, to each of our candidates, Mr. Cormier, Mrs. McLean, Mr. Smith, Mr. Foran, and Mr. Kenny. It's an incredible task to want to take on here in the city, of course, to lead the city to the next level of prosperity. And we thank you all for your courage in putting your name forward for that position. The next few years are, of course, key for our city, and we ask everyone to make sure that you get out and vote on May 9th. It is essential that we keep our democratic right that we have earned, of course, here in the country, and that we use that to go forward and see the prosperity in our city. There is also a lot of information out there about all of the candidates. We encourage everyone to find as much information as possible and to support your local candidate, to make sure that you get out and vote during the pre-election period, during the advanced polling, and of course on May 9th. There is no greater area we know than living here in the Miramichi. And again, I want to thank all of you for putting your name forward, for joining us here, of course, this evening as we give our viewers an opportunity to get to know each and every one of you. For a lot of people, of course, they don't know you yet, but we've given our viewers tonight an opportunity to do that. So we thank you for that. We look forward to the results on May 9th. Don't forget to tune in to Rogers on May 9th. We will have those election results here live as they happen. And of course, tune into our social media, Rogers TV. We look forward to what's to come here for the city of Miramichi, and we hope that you'll get out and make that decision for yourself. So please tune in soon and share with your friends. Thanks for joining us here at Rogers TV.